While many Americans were shocked by the events at the Capitol in 2021, it's not uncommon that the United States faces attempted coups. In 1781, the Americans had defeated the British Empire in the Battle of Yorktown to secure their victory in the Revolutionary War. Despite their victory, the British maintained a dormant presence in the newfound country, particularly in the occupied New York City. To contain them, George Washington relocated the Continental Army to a camp in the town of Newburgh up the Hudson River. Was then the Revolutionary War in sight, Continental Congress had previously promised in 1780 a lifetime pension for Army officers after they were discharged. 2 years later, Robert Morris, the Finance Minister of the United States, controversially stopped Army pay to save costs. Army officers repeatedly complained about the lack of pay among other issues, failing to convince Congress to reinstate pensions. Congress was troubled with an empty treasury and a lack of financial support from the states. Moreover, the Articles of Confederation that governed the United States prevented the Congress from imposing any tax to fill its treasury. The longer Congress failed to pay, the greater tensions escalated. By February of 1783, the Continental Army was considering a military coup to resolve the dilemma. By then, rumors that the United States had made peace with the British Empire had begun spreading. Alexander Hamilton had warned George Washington of the circulating ideas within the army, advising him to side with the officers. Washington, exercising his agency, took on the responsibility of remediating the conflict, as allowing the army to coup would contradict his Republican principles that served as the basis for the country's founding. By early March, rumors were spreading alleging the Army's potential refusal to disband until the demands were met. By this point, Army officials were seriously considering subverting the authority of Congress. On March 10th, an anonymous letter spread around the camp, highlighting the Army's underpayment and congressional neglect, and demanding an ultimatum be sent to Congress. An anonymous call for a meeting the next morning was also released separately. George Washington, after discovering the letter, grew vexed at the threatening behavior of his army, and avoided the meeting next morning, calling for his own on March 15th. In his announcement, Washington requested a post-meeting report, implying his absence from the meeting. Fast forward 3 days, and the planned meeting was opened by General Gates, a known rival of George Washington. However, to everyone's surprise, Washington appeared despite his implications 4 days before. Washington noticed that his officers held less respect from him, particularly due to their outstanding payment for service. He then gave a speech in response to an anonymous letter to cool the officers' ambitions. "Do not open the floodgates of civil discord," he told them, "and deluge our rising empire in blood." His words effectively persuaded the officers to abandon the conspiracy. He reminded them of their commitment to the cause of independence and the importance of preserving the Union, warning them of the consequences of staging a military coup and urging them to keep their trust in the Continental Congress to resolve their grievances. All of the generals in the room reaffirmed their loyalty, condemning the conspiracy they applauded earlier in the week. News of the conspiracy had reached Congress, convincing the Assembly to urgently contend with the dilemma. On March 20, Congress agreed to pay the Army officers in full for 5 years, as opposed to their original promise of lifetime semi-pension. The settlement did not quell discontent among Army officers, however. Unionist sentiment continued to circulate around Army circles. After news reached the country of the cessation of hostilities against the British Empire, Congress ordered the disbandment of the Army, paying each soldier 3 months of salary. But Congress was broke, so Robert Morris issued the soldiers personal notes worth $800,000. The Continental Army was gradually disbanded over the next 6 months, although not without significant commotion. On a 90-degree day on June 17, 1783, Continental Army soldiers, believing they would be disbanded before the personal notes were being distributed, demanded payment from the Congress of the Confederation for their war service, threatening to stage a military coup if Congress went the other way. While Congress ignored the ultimatum, no action was taken by the soldiers on that day. The soldiers did not forget about their grievances, however. 2 days later, 80 Continental Army soldiers had deserted their post at Lancaster, Pennsylvania, joining soldiers of the Philadelphia City Barracks to form a 500-man rogue force. The next morning, most of these soldiers broke into Capitol Hill to hold Congress accountable for the neglect of the Army. the congressmen were held hostage, and when Congress unsuccessfully tried to secure congressional protection from the government of Pennsylvania, they were exhausted of all options in their favor. Congress was dissolved by the Army without replacement, and it was reformed in Princeton, New Jersey. Over the next few years, new Congresses were being reformed, a consequence of the weakness of the Confederate government as a result of the Articles of Confederation. The Newburgh Conspiracy and the Pennsylvania Mutiny were important reasons for the summoning of the Constitutional Convention in 1787. As the states could not be trusted to protect the federal government, a federal district was created between the South and the North, now known as the District of Columbia, to house federal institutions to accompany the new Constitution.